the one thing, like people talk about depression all the time, the difference between depression and sadness is just, from happenstance, whatever happened or didn't happen for you. And depression is your body saying, fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore.
He may have been the rubber-faced king of 90s comedy, turning films like Dumb and Dumber and Liar Liar into instant classics, but the man behind the laughter lived a very different reality. Jim Carrey made the world roar with silliness and slapstick charm. Yet off-camera, his life was anything but carefree. His journey has been a whirlwind of soaring comedic highs and painful, often overwhelming lows. How did someone who gave so much joy end up carrying so much pain? This is the hidden story of Jim Carrey, the man who made millions laugh, while quietly wondering if anyone could hear his cry. On January 17, 1962, in the quiet Canadian town of Newmarket, Ontario, a boy named Jim Carrey entered the world. His childhood, however, was anything but quiet. His mother, Kathleen, battled chronic illness and heavy sedation, often disappearing into painkillers. His father, Percy, a talented saxophonist turned accountant, struggled to keep the home running. The atmosphere was tense, the future uncertain. To escape the heaviness at home, young Jim spent hours alone in front of his mirror, experimenting with faces and voices. That was where he first discovered his gift for mimicry. His earliest audience wasn't Hollywood, it was his parents. He tried to make his mother laugh so she could forget her pain, even for a moment. Behind every silly grin he performed, there was a child trying to lift the weight off his mother's shoulders. But laughter couldn't shield the family from reality. When Jim was 12, Percy lost his accounting job, and their fragile stability collapsed. The Carreys were forced out of their home and lived out of a Volkswagen van parked near Lake Ontario. Jim and his brother slept in a tent through the brutal Canadian cold, nights he later described as both terrifying and strangely unifying for the family. A small break came when Percy found work at the Titan Wheels factory. They got a modest house, but there was a cost. Jim and his brother had to clean the factory every night after school. From 6 p.m. until dawn, they scrubbed floors, cleaned toilets, and did security rounds. The boy who once lived to make others laugh now barely spoke at school. His world had shrunk to survival. Yet Percy never let Jim's dream die. When Jim was 15, his father took him by the hand and said, "Go on stage once, just try. You have a gift." That push changed everything. Jim stepped onto the stage at Toronto's Yuck Yucks Comedy Club and was booed off almost immediately. It was painful, humiliating, a blow to everything he hoped for. Still, he kept going. By 1979, after years of factory work and late-night practice, Jim landed a paid 20-minute set for the first time, just $20, but it meant the world. Word of his talent spread through Toronto's comedy clubs until one night, legendary comedian Rodney Dangerfield spotted him. Impressed, he invited Jim to join him on tour as his opening act. The boy who had once failed on stage was now performing alongside legends across America. And with that momentum, at just 19, Jim Carrey packed his dreams and headed toward the city where futures are made, or crushed, Hollywood. When Jim Carrey arrived in Hollywood, he had one dream above all others, to perform on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Carson was the ultimate gatekeeper of comedy. If he liked you, your career could explode overnight. If he didn't, it was over before it began. In 1983, Jim finally got his shot. Before appearing on Carson's stage, he had to pass a test performance at the Improv in Los Angeles. He went up, gave everything he had, and waited. The crowd barely reacted. Days later, the phone call came. His Tonight Show appearance was canceled. The opportunity he had envisioned for years slipped right through his fingers. A small break followed when he landed the lead role in The Duck Factory, an NBC sitcom. It seemed like his big moment, until the series was canceled after just 13 episodes. Another door shut. Ironically, the very thing that would one day make him a global icon, His elastic, rubber face expressions was treated as a flaw early on. Casting directors constantly told him, "It's too much," or "It doesn't look real." Every audition felt like a reminder that Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. Then came an unusual opportunity, an audition for The Dead Pool, the final film in the Dirty Harry series. Jim recorded a wild, unhinged tape, dancing, shouting, even spitting at the camera. When he mailed it in, he was convinced he had destroyed his chances forever. But fate had other plans. Clint Eastwood saw the tape and loved it. He even showed it to his friends. When Jim arrived on set, Eastwood placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and said, "Good job, kid." That's how Jim landed the small role of Johnny Squares, a drug-addicted rock star who dies early in the film. It was a tiny part, barely noticed by audiences, but it kept him alive in Hollywood. During these hard years, Jim would walk along Mulholland Drive at night, staring down at the glowing city and imagining success coming toward him. He believed deeply that his breakthrough already existed somewhere in the future. He took that visualization further. One day, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered and kept it in his wallet. He didn't have enough money for rent, yet he carried a $10 million promise to himself. And somehow, it kept him moving. Not long after, in 1990, his life began to shift. Jim joined the cast of In Living Color, a sketch comedy show that let him unleash the outrageous characters he'd been crafting for years. Fire Marshal Bill, Vera DeMilo, and countless others. America finally saw what he was capable of. For the first time, he had real recognition. And then came 1994, what many call the year Jim Carrey rewrote Hollywood history. A year that proved one thing: sometimes the world just needs time to catch up to your dreams. In the early 1990s, Hollywood's comedy throne belonged to giants: Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, and Robin Williams. Jim Carrey, meanwhile, was still viewed as a quirky TV comic from In Living Color, talented but hardly a movie star. Then a strange little script landed in his hands: Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. A story about a hyperactive pet detective solving animal kidnappings. The filmmakers had seen Jim's outrageous characters on television and were so captivated by him that they actually rewrote the role specifically for him. The studio, however, hated it. They predicted the film would flop, but the directors trusted their instincts and offered Jim the part anyway. Jim accepted, but only on one bold condition: he would shape the entire character, and that's exactly what he did. Jim created Ace Ventura almost like a lab experiment, part cartoon, part wild bird. Every line was delivered with exaggerated precision. His walk, his voice, his expressions, none of it existed in the script. Even his now iconic catchphrase, "Alrighty then," was Jim's own invention. When the film hit theaters in February 1994, critics trashed it as childish and over the top, but audiences loved him. The movie exploded, earning over $100 million on a $15 million budget. Hollywood suddenly had a new comedic force, but many still assumed he was a one-hit cartoon act. Then came The Mask, a comic book fantasy about an ordinary man transformed into a green, physics-defying whirlwind. The studio knew the role required someone practically animated, and Jim was the only choice. His facial control was so extreme that even VFX artists said they barely needed to alter him. Directors simply stepped aside and let him improvise. The famous "smokin' line"? Pure Jim. The film was another mega hit, $351 million worldwide. In a single year, Jim Carrey went from TV comedian to one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. Still, skeptics whispered that his success was just luck. Then, at the end of 1994, he delivered the third strike in his historic hat trick, Dumb and Dumber, a cross-country comedy of two lovable idiots that cemented his status as comedy's new king. Jim Carrey hadn't just arrived, he had taken over Hollywood. Here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. The studio never wanted Jeff Daniels for Dumb and Dumber. They felt he was too serious, not funny enough to survive next to Jim Carrey's wild energy. But Jim wouldn't budge. "I want Jeff," he told them. "He's the perfect straight man, my comedy anchor." Jim fought for him, and the result was magic. Two actors as different as oil and water somehow created pure comedic gold. And Jim didn't stop there. He pushed the stupidity to the extreme. He even had his dentist grind down his own tooth to create Lloyd's ridiculous chipped grin. The bowl haircut? Jim's idea too. The gamble paid off. Dumb and Dumber made $247 million on a $17 million budget, completing Jim's legendary hat trick of hits in 1994. Overnight, he became the most sought-after comedian on Earth, and he proved that comedy could dominate the box office. Then came 1996. Hollywood witnessed history. Jim Carrey became the first actor ever paid $20 million for a single movie, The Cable Guy. That fake $10 million check he once kept in his wallet? Life had doubled it. It felt like the law of attraction made real, but The Cable Guy was different. Darker, stranger, ahead of its time. Jim played an obsessive cable installer, awkward, needy, unsettling. The movie didn't flop, but audiences didn't fully understand it. And for the first time, people saw hints of a darker side in Jim's performances, one that made some viewers uncomfortable. In 1997, he returned to familiar territory with Liar Liar, a lawyer forced to tell the truth for 24 hours, the perfect playground for Jim's physical comedy and manic energy. The film was a hit with both critics and audiences, earning him another Golden Globe nomination. But Jim refused to stay in the box Hollywood built for him. He made a sharp turn into drama with The Truman Show, playing an ordinary man trapped in an artificial world. Many doubted he could pull it off, the rubber-faced comedian doing serious acting. Yet when the film released, the laughter stopped. Jim delivered a performance so vulnerable, so human, that critics had to admit they were wrong. He won a Golden Globe, but the Oscars overlooked him entirely. He continued dominating the early 2000s with Me, Myself, and Irene, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Bruce Almighty. Hits that kept him on top of the world, at least on the outside. Because behind all the laughter, Jim was carrying something heavy. A pain he kept buried behind jokes and characters. A darkness that would eventually swallow him and send him into the hardest chapter of his life. Every superstar eventually reaches a moment when the spotlight starts to dim. And Jim Carrey was no exception. By the late 2000s, the man whose grin once lit up Hollywood was struggling to keep it alive. His downfall didn't begin with a failed movie, but with heartbreak. His marriage to Melissa Wummer ended. His whirlwind union with Dumb and Dumber co-star Lauren Holly lasted just 8 months. And even his engagement to Renee Zellweger dissolved. As his personal life unraveled, his career followed. Films like The Number 23 disappointed, and Mr. Popper's Penguins came and went without leaving much of a mark. The unstoppable force of comedy was quietly fighting depression. He later admitted he spent years on Prozac. It helped, but never truly healed him. The world's favorite funny man was depending on pills just to get through the day. Then came 2015, the darkest chapter of his life. His former girlfriend, Catriona White, died by suicide, triggering lawsuits, accusations, and a crushing wave of guilt. Jim withdrew from the spotlight completely. No more red carpets, no more interviews. He disappeared into his art studio, spending hours painting in silence. His 2017 short documentary, I Needed Color, revealed what he couldn't say out loud. I needed colors. They healed me when nothing else could. Hollywood felt more like a corporate machine than a creative playground, and Jim no longer felt he belonged in it. He still returned occasionally, a cameo in Kick-Ass 2, though he refused to promote the film on moral grounds, and a nostalgic comeback with Dumb and Dumber 2. But the spark was gone. His viral moment at New York Fashion Week said it all, None of this is real. We don't matter. Was it a joke or a confession? No one knew. Even at award shows, he let the truth slip out. At the Golden Globes, he joked, "I'm a 2-time Golden Globe winner, but I dream of being a 3-time winner. Then I'd finally be enough." The room laughed, but his eyes didn't. Then came 2020. While the world was locked inside, Jim returned as Dr. Robotnik in Sonic the Hedgehog, channeling the chaotic energy of Ace Ventura and the Mask one more time. The film became a surprise blockbuster, earning $319 million during the pandemic. Critics said, "This is the Jim Carrey we missed." But in April 2022, he made a stunning announcement. He was ready to retire, unless a script written in gold ink came along. And that is Jim Carrey's paradox. A boy who once lived in a tent, who wrote himself a fake $10 million check to keep his dream alive, became the biggest comedy star on earth. And even when Hollywood mocked him, misunderstood him, or moved on without him, he found a new way to smile, through painting, reflection, and spirituality. Behind the rubber-faced comedian was a wounded soul, still searching for peace. But what do you think is the most heartbreaking part of Jim Carrey's story? Let me know in the comments below. I read everyone. And if you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the lives behind the legends.